going to install a 25mm PERRIN rear sway bar. So that'll stiffen up the rear end so it doesn't roll and it'll give me more control of the car. When we're done with this, I'm also going to install some Faction Fab F-spec coilovers, so that'll be fun too. So I'll get to removing the old stuff, but first I want to do the lube on the rubber parts, the silicone parts. So this is kind of the layout when it's on the vehicle. It's going to attach. It's going to go down into the lower control arm, and this one's going to attach to the sway bar. I'll probably go on the 2 setting, number 2. It's got the 3 settings for stiffness. The number 1 setting out here will give you the least stiffness, and then center. The center one will give you approximately 350% stiffer ride and sway, not swifter ride, but sway control than the stock. So I'm going to go with that, and then that'll just keep things level in the back. And that combined with the coilover should give it a good ride. All right, so the first thing we want to do according to the instructions is take out both end links. So this one was hard to release, so I had to get a little cheater extension on this, but it appears to be coming off. Let's see if I can get it. So I need to get a Allen wrench, I believe, in the center there. Yeah, because the whole unit's turning. All right, so I can't get that top bolt out, but since I'm not going to reuse this link, and I'm just going to remove it, try to remove it with the sway bar, see how that goes. I got the end links loose at the control arm, so I'm going to loosen these from the flange and see if I can drop all this out. All right, I'm going to do the other side. I got the other side out. All right, that was easy. All right, so just for comparison on the diameter of this steel of the sway bar, the black one is the one I just removed from stock. It's 22, I believe, millimeters, or 20, I don't remember. And then the PERRIN is 25. So it's stronger on any of the forces on this. So it's going to take more force to bend it than it would the stock. and the end pieces go up and down as the suspension on each side moves up and down, and it keeps it from going too far. It keeps the body from rolling, and keeps the suspension from extending, articulating too much. The springs carry the load, and then the shock centers dampen the movement up and down. And then the control arms and all the links keep the geometry where it's supposed to be moving, and then the sway bar gives you that kind of feedback, that muscular feedback. Like if you were doing push-ups, you can imagine the ends of these are doing like push-ups with your car. So the black one, with all of its movement on the end links and then the small diameter, is going to allow the end of the car to move more when you turn. So if the car is going this way, and when you turn, the back end is going to want to come up, and then you start diving, get a little bit of that understeer. So this is gonna keep that. That's much stronger. And then I have 3 adjustments I can do. The furthest one out will give me the least amount of force. Here's my sway bar. So if you look, the first setting on the furthest out hole still gives you 250 times more force holding that rear end down than the stock. And then the center, where I'm going to put mine, is 320% stronger resistance to the body roll. And if you had it all the way in at number 3 there, that's 6 times the strength of the stock. So pretty impressive. That's why I went up to the 25 millimeter, because even on the furthest setting, I'm getting more than double the force. But I'm going to set it on number 2 and see how that works. You don't have to loosen that too much, just enough to make sure that's spinning, and it just basically loosens that tension a little bit. And like I said, I'm going to be taking that off to do my shocks anyways. So this is where we're going to attach our end link down here. And the way it's going to look in there is 2 spacers behind and 1 in front. And then that's going to mount up inside of the control arm. These are easy to feed through, but just too tight to get that in without loosening that, and even then had to pry it a little bit with the pry bar. Last resort is always a hammer. So it turns out I do need to reuse these. These are the ones that go through the control arm, the bolt and nut. And there's some spacers that align the bottom of the link inside of the control arm. So alright, so what I had to do is loosen the shock belt bolt that takes away some of the pinching force. And then I kind of wedged in the last spacer up here in the front, or the rear of the car. And then once I started to see a gap, just screwdriver or something you can wedge in there and just kind of play with it and then just get it in there. And that's, so that gives this mount. And put this back on. And tight. I have to remember to tighten that up when I'm done. Now I'm going to do this bolt. Basically, from outside, I'm going to go one washer. So I'll do the opposite for the left. Go get everything else sand tight, and then I'll come back and torque everything up. This is going to go to 90 foot-pounds, 35 to 40 on this and this. And this, and then I'll be good to go. Except, you know what, I'm gonna leave this off because I'm doing my shocks next. Alright, well, got the suspension installed. I've been riding on it for a week, and I'll talk about the sway bar first. I'm gonna go ahead and adjust it to the lower setting, which will be 200%, which are 2 times stiffer than the stock sway bar. So I'll get double the force, and that should be enough to give me the daily ride and just a little bit better performance. I will say the way it is right now is very aggressive, but not impossible to ride with. But I want a little more comfortable on the rear, because the rear being too stiff makes the front feel sloppy, although it's not. It's much improved over the stock. You feel more bumps, but the damping is much more increased. The springs have more control than the stock. I noticed that the stock springs allow more kind of follow through waviness when you're going through some whoopie type ruts. And being in the Midwest here, I'm learning that the roads are in pretty rough shape a lot of the year. They'll go through some improvement processes here and there, but you can't have too stiff a ride, or you're gonna ruin your car. So I think all I need to do is adjust it to the lower setting, and I think I'll be set. The ride height in the rear I think is pretty good. The front, there's just too much gap between the wheel and the fender, so I'm going to drop that a little bit. Plus the lines of this model year, this generation, it has kind of a hot rod look where it's a little higher in the back, so I'm going to it should accentuate that just a bit coming down on the front end, so I think it'll look pretty cool. I don't want to do any wide wheels, no crazy camber, no body kits or anything like that. I just think a nice, almost stealthy look is what I'm going for. But highly recommend a sway bar. I would go to, if you're going to get a 22 millimeter, I would probably set that on the center setting, and maybe even start at the highest, stiffest setting. I couldn't imagine going lower than that to get, if you want an improved ride, because it's almost perfect right now, except for, you know, like I said, it's a daily driver, so I need a little more comfort. So but amazing handling. I mean, I can get like 10 miles an hour gains on some of these turns. I usually take it just a little bit above, you know, when it's safe. But I mean, I was just like on rails literally, and it's pretty impressive. So highly recommend a sway bar. In the rear, the front feels great. I don't think it needs any sway bar improvements. Like I said, I'm going to dive the nose just a hair, loosen up the sway bar just one setting. Not going to mess with the rear anymore because it fits in the wheel well perfectly. In the front, the only adjustment I might make after lowering a bit is probably a couple more notches of stiffer damping, because I have to match the rear. Like I said, you have to be confident when you're driving. You don't want to have to be thinking of, oh my gosh, should I do this, should I do that? Driving should be safe, and you shouldn't have to think about that kind of stuff. So right now, there's too much of a difference from rear to front, so I'm going to correct that a little bit. But otherwise, very happy. I think it was worth it if you want to do some improvements on your car. Handling, I would get coilovers that you can afford. I wouldn't go any lower than the Faction Fab F specs that I have. And we'll see how they do over time, but so far just an amazing feel. And I would suggest a rear sway bar, and you can get a 22 millimeter, but I would, like I said, I would go at least the second setting, or maybe the stiffest on that. So hope that helps, and thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you on the next one.